Hello. Oh my goodness, what a journey we have been on with this painting. Welcome to part 4 of this extended Seeing Clearly with Charlotte Giblin. I'm Charlotte Giblin. And, hopefully you saw the third part in particular of this particular series in which I have been pushing this painting in unexpected new directions. And I was reflecting last night and then this morning, because it was just yesterday when I filmed the other 3 parts of the painting. It needed to all come out like really quickly, that the lesson that I was learning from the painting and from sharing the experience was happening very quickly. And I was reflecting on what it all meant with the way that by the end of the day yesterday in part 3, I had completely covered this canvas with black and white gesso and made like a complete mess of the canvas, completely covering up everything that I'd done during the day. And in fact, you know, this whole, would normally be a kilogram of yogurt. This is full of paint that I scraped off the painting. That was how much had been poured over the top in an attempt to really push myself out of my comfort zone, which, oh my goodness, I did. And I can see how the story in this little series of episodes has evolved and how important a story it is. And I keep cycling back to the whole notion of trying to learn to shed other people's negative judgment, which is so difficult. And in a creative sphere, when we're working on our own practice, whether it's on our own or in a class or with witnesses on video, our ego, of course, gets in the way. And we really want to produce something that not only is going to make us feel like we've accomplished something, but that is going to give us compliments and impress other people. And what I've been trying to demonstrate through this particular story is the value of pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone, which is what I did very intensely yesterday with the black and white version, because that is how I have discovered, and I know I'm not alone, that is how I have discovered that I evolve, grow the most quickly. Because you find out, you learn a lot about yourself when you're put in an uncomfortable situation. You feel the discomfort and you feel the triggers. And just as in part 3, I explained how my other half was really unimpressed with the 2 paintings that I'd done as versions in the earlier part of the day, and my negative defensive reaction to his sort of nothing face. Really, I had to look at, well, why am I having that reaction? Well, of course, because I was still playing in a safe zone, even though I felt like maybe I was pushing myself a little bit, and I wasn't achieving the intention that I'd put forward with this canvas and what I wanted to share with you. And I knew that he was right about that. And sometimes we don't like being reminded that somebody else is right, even when they are mirroring what our own intention was to begin with. So having the perspective to just pause and step back from that negative reaction is very helpful, but it can be really challenging. And that's what so much of my Seeing Clearly work is about. The way that our art practice can help us grow as human beings, because in this safe zone, because the canvas is a very safe zone. There's no harm is going to come to anybody other than our own ego or ourselves. No harm is going to come by pushing ourselves and experimenting here. And if we gain a little bit of extra confidence or discover something new about ourselves, like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I could be that brave. I didn't know that I quite enjoyed working in grey paints, where all my colours, all my paintings are very colourful. Look, I'm even in a grey top today, reflecting it. So obviously the grey theme has infiltrated. Not the earrings though, don't worry. But we learn a lot about ourselves when we're pushed to gently, in this case, because it's a safe zone, when we're pushed to a point of discomfort, and if we can have the self-awareness and the patience just to address, well, why is it uncomfortable? And I've got to say, despite the fact that I really wasn't happy with what happens on the canvas from a creative perspective, I felt quite jubilant when I went, and exhausted when I went to bed last night. And then this morning I've been in such a good mood, because it's, even though I'm not producing something that is making me excited creatively, what I'm doing is I'm really exposing my ego, my vulnerabilities to you. And it feels like such an important story to share as a professional artist who's been very successful, and a tutor who has a lot of students coming to learn from me. For you to see that as a human being and a creative person, I also go through stages where the paintings look terrible, where I'm unsure about what I'm doing, but because I want to push myself that little bit further to see what I might be able to do. And that's the key. And I think it's so important that we try these new things, even if we decide at the end of it, well, that was a waste of paint. Except none of this is ever a waste, especially when you're working in acrylic. You just layer over the top. Whatever happens with this, and I'm going to do a little bit more work on it with you, and I will show you the change. I will explain the changes I made since the last video, because I did continue working off camera just to remove a lot of the paint. And then I wanted to just experiment with a little bit, and I'll bring you down and show you the detail of what I did, so you're up to date. But the really important moral of the tale is to try these different things. And yes, it does then infiltrate our personal lives and the way we work if we allow ourselves to take these risks, take these little these dangerous ego steps of doing something which other people don't like, or think, oh, she's not as good as I thought she was, or whatever reflection that you're worried about. And I've been delighted to discover that I've lost that part of my ego to the greatest extent, maybe 98%, because there was a little bit of me yesterday which was frustrated that I hadn't been able to magic down some kind of incredible new technique of abstraction and produce something that gave me goosebumps. And in fact, I was watching back the videos from the whole series, and in the first video, which is the yellow backgrounds with the trees over the top, in fact, in very early stages of that, maybe even just 10 minutes in, 5 or 10 minutes into the painting process, there were some absolutely gorgeous results. And I thought, oh, if only I'd left the painting there. It looked really interesting. It was a beautiful semi-abstract painting. And quite an interesting exercise for you to look at that video if you haven't seen it, or think about your own paintings in the same way if you photograph every stage, and at what point did you think that the painting should have been left alone. But what I realised very quickly when I was filming these episodes, it wasn't about doing something really exciting in 10 minutes. This has very definitely needed to be a story of almost trying to fail, pushing myself creatively in very uncomfortable directions to see what might happen. But because that's the point, it's not, that has been the story that needed to be shared with you. Because I did know that about myself, but I haven't filmed those kinds of failures, inverted commas, before. So that is why I can see I didn't stop at that point. I was compelled to keep going and keep trying and keep playing with the paint, partly because I was loving it, but partly because now I understand where this whole story needed to go and why I needed it to share it with you. So I'm going to bring you down to have a look at this, because when you last saw it, it was completely, the canvas was completely covered in black, grey, white paint. And you can see from a distance, I've scraped off a lot of that. But what's happened again, automatically my hand, my eye have wanted to start creating those landscape strata again. And that is a technique that I really enjoy with the palette knife. It's just that the only difference at the moment is that it's grey rather than the bright colours that I would use. And you know what, at any point, and we can always say this about any aspect of our creative practice, at any point I can change this. I can just paint over it entirely in white. I can start again. I can manipulate this at any stage into a landscape that I'm better known for. And I know that I can do that. So there's no danger or fear or evolution for me in doing that again with you on camera. I've already filmed an entire painting where I followed that process of some exploration, but I knew that I was creating a semi-abstract landscape. But then what I did was I started to, because there's a white area here in the background with a tree form from the earlier version. And so I splattered a load of fluid white and then squirted water on with the syringe I was using, which created, just because of the undulations in the canvas and the slight tilt of the floor, the water then spread upwards and has made these really interesting shadows. And all of the dots wasn't created by flicking a brush. There was very little paint left in the bottle of white. And so I was just shaking it and squeezing it and it was splatting out all the little dots. And I really liked that effect. It's almost like a night sky or constellations. So I left it and have left this bottom half largely without any white dots. But I'm going to show you this close up because there's some really interesting effects there. And then I want to make a couple of changes and try something totally new over the top of this painting. For me, again, something totally new with the intention of doing something that I would never do, and almost on purpose trying to make a bad painting. Trying to fail with this, knowing that nothing is a failure, nothing is a waste of time, but trying to do something so unusual that it would be unexpected for me, and for anybody else looking at it wouldn't quite believe that it was one of my paintings. So I'm going to pop up and bring you down and have a look at this. I mean, already it looks quite different flat from above, doesn't it? So if I zoom down in now, And you can see where I scraped off all of the grey and the black, and it's created the sort of the strata of the hills. And oh, sorry, I've got the microphone coming in the way there. Yeah, so there's just a lot of scraping away, and it's exposed. I mean, it makes really interesting sort of patterns in the canvas. I keep seeing eyes in it. Can you see that there's like an eye shape there and an eye shape over here? And I did wonder whether I wanted to then turn it into a bit of a portrait landscape, and thought, no, I've done that. I've done portraits. But you see here, I mean, that's a really interesting sort of abstract, suggestive shape. And the way that the water has melted away the white dots that were there. And that was just left overnight. I didn't do any of that on purpose. And the white dots are fluid. In some areas, they've stayed quite solid. And then you've got the really lovely watery effect. So that's actually quite interesting. And when I came down this morning to look at that, I thought, oh, you know, that raised my heart rate a tiny little bit, just lifted my spirits. Yeah, because there's some really interesting, you know, shapes. They could be trees, could be sort of people. So it almost looks like the rising up of mist, and I did turn the canvas the other way up. You're correct. In fact, I'll just show you what it looks like upside down. I did turn it this way, and all I can see is a massive eye there. Again, you can see that big eye? And I looked at it and I thought, do I prefer it that way up? And all I can see is the face in the top half of the canvas. And again, I thought, no, you know what? It's almost too obvious. In fact, there's loads of eyes. In fact, now when I'm looking at it, maybe it's enough that I know that there are some eyes in the landscape. And I've done that before. I've got a canvas where I have, in fact, done lots of drippy painting and done a very realistic eye in there. So I've done it. Let's see what else I can do with this one. So I'm going to put you back up above and do some painting. Okay, so you are back up. I'm just checking that my microphone is intact. There. Right. Okay, so you've had a good look at it close up, and what I thought was I would continue with the black and the white and the grey, partly because I have so much of this left over, of this grey paint, huge amount, but this time I'm going to use a brush, and I'm also going to continue doing something which I would find quite unexpected. So make some brushed marks using just those monochrome colours, plus maybe a little bit of cobalt, because I was drawn to that cobalt when I did the black and the white yesterday, and just because I haven't used any blue in it up until then, and just randomly picked up the cobalt fluid. So that suggests to me that maybe we'll introduce a little bit of that, maybe not. And I wouldn't normally do anything like this, or what I'm just about to do. So that is the whole point of this exercise, in trying some different things. And I almost want to, I want to make a point of doing something which is unexpected for myself, or actually pushing the painting in a direction that feels unnatural to me. So I want to put some relatively abstract marks in with the brush that actively don't makes sense to my realist eye. So playing with perhaps, or just not following the rules of light and shade to the degree that I might be normally tempted to. But I am going to perhaps follow a slightly, is it a contrived idea, but actually almost creating a frame or painting over bits of this gorgeous background just because I like it, and trying not to be precious about it. Trying to allow this to be a part of the process and journey rather than a finished piece or destination. So, right, this is not what I would ever do with one of my paintings. So let's do it. Maybe perhaps this needs to be some kind of, I don't even want to say some kind of opening, because I'm thinking about a story, and I'm trying to avoid thinking in stories, but I am clearly creating a frame. Aren't I? Now, what would be really unusual here? Well, I certainly wouldn't normally put just a line straight across. Remembering at any point, this can be painted over. Now let's see what happens if I do something there. Adding in some black. If you remember from the previous video, I was talking about how I never allow black in my classes, ready mixed black, because it's such a cold colour. You can mix your own with much better results. Right, so let's put the black to one side. How about getting in a bit of this grey? So that's actually got quite a nice blend to it. I mean, you can see it's just a huge pot of all of the colour that I spilt over the top. Blend in there. And purposefully putting the lighter tone on the outside, because that is not how it would work realistically. There would be light on the inside. So I'm conscious of the fact that I'm changing up any sense of realism with the lighting. So maybe there's some using the brush to create some planes which are actively confusing. Mix a bit of black just into the bottom of that one without thinking. Oh, how about just a little bit of white? I feel like I could definitely bring some white in at the edges. Perhaps with a palette knife. There we go. We have so I'm going to get 2 tools, continue with the brush, but maybe use a palette knife up here. But I don't have to stop using techniques that get me excited just because I'm trying to do something different. Right, well, you see, I've just stopped talking because I'm interested in what's happening here. And I feel that a lot of the things that I've said, I don't need to, oh God, see, that is relatively interesting and unexpected. There's something happening with these shapes and little areas of exposed paint, which is definitely not what I would have done. I did think about, I pulled the blue out. I wonder whether if I just do that, can't get much more random. And I picked up the sponge before, so let's see what the blue does with the sponge. Actually, it mixes so quickly in with the black, you can hardly see that. But I did have a great deal of success with adding in some water. So let's just add some water to that side. Get a small palette knife, scrape some more. You can see how the removing the paint from some areas, then the water pools totally differently. It can be kind of guided. Oh, there's some interesting little spots emerging there. Let's get my waste pot. And we're going to need a bigger palette knife. Don't want to waste any of that lovely paint. Whoops, that was a good flick and a splat. Oh, it is actually quite funny how, I put this really lovely, neat border around the edge. And clearly, that's going to be totally redundant. Yeah, so getting a combination of deliberate marks, but without overthinking them, and then allowing the water to move in a very random way that I can't control. Again, there's a lot of paint there. Maybe this, just, oh, that's the fluid white which has run out. And I know I'm off camera here. Get my syringe in the dirty water. And just squirt that over the fluid white. So I get a really interesting mix. Look at that, it's like two cat eyes. So, oh, I've moved over a little bit with the scraping. And now with the joy of being able to manipulate the canvas like this, which is one of the whole reasons why I started on the loose canvas, doing something totally different, being able to move it like the malleable thing that it is. We're almost getting like a mirrored. I do really like the way that, let's do a bit, we want to do a bit more of that. Do really like the way that the abstract forms created with the use of the water. Oh, that's interesting. The way it just splattered up. Now, do I risk moving that again? Oh, look how it's already moving with the contour in the paint and probably the way I'm moving around on the floor. Well, you know what? You know what? I'm going to leave that except for putting a bit more paint across there and bringing just a little bit of that white just down with the palette knife, a little bit down further. Right, put these to the side, don't sit in the lid. Oh, I am about to sit in a splodge of wet paint. Good job I'm not in my Sunday best. So, here endeth the lesson of trying different things, almost pushing yourself to create something purposefully bad, to free yourself up from the bind of perfectionism and the heavy burden of responsibility for always doing well and getting people's approval, when you can learn so much about yourself and grow without that kind of self-imposed responsibility. And I'm going to leave this now for however long it needs to be left, to just allow it to sit without me feeling a panic of I've got to do something with it. Allow it to completely dry, and what I might find is that I keep working a little bit on here. I may just paint over the whole thing. I may discover that there's some real interest in that window that makes all of this section almost redundant. Yeah. But being able to just release yourself a little bit from any kind of expectations and have some fun, no matter how stressful the fun can seem at times. And I feel now what's happened in my body is that I feel a definite sense of peace, that I knew that I had to do a fourth part of this just to show you where we were going with the whole epic moral tale and what it's meant for me and where this canvas was going and how remarkably different this is to the first versions, which were quite safe for me, even though I thought they weren't. I thought I was pushing myself, but it was very, very, very Charlotte. This is completely new. And who knows, maybe there'll be elements of it that I reuse and try those techniques on different canvases. And without a doubt, this has been a priceless exercise in sharing this kind of letting go journey, even though it's quite a conscious letting go. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope that this has given you a little bit of permission to play, maybe released you from a few fears, and been able to enjoy watching another artist go through some very challenging phases with their paintings. Okay, thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.